Come on. There we
Oh,
go.
there you go.
Now
Okay.
we start.
Yeah. Hi. We're jumping on in a little bit of a excited state. At least for me, I'm a little bit distracted. But welcome. I'm Jack. This is Talk Openly, and I'm here with Daniel, who is a wonderful and inspiring friend along the path.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Jack. It's so nice to see you.
So nice to see you too. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation tonight. We're going to be talking about anger, and
Do you have any experience with that?
oh no, not at all.
Huh.
I don't know what we're going to talk about.
Weird.
Weird. No, quite to the contrary. I have a lot of experience with this emotion. So I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. How about you, Daniel?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I got plenty.
I remember
We could probably do an entire show regularly just about anger.
Oh yeah. In fact, maybe we should.
All right. It'll be a spin-off.
Yeah. And I remember you were telling a story maybe a few times ago about how you felt that you were a pretty calm guy, but then turns out there's many experiences that your children could bring up for you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They can remind me of all kinds of experiences where I was quite angry.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I try not to remind them of that anymore.
Right.
Apparently there still are. It hasn't stopped. I don't want to give any impression that the anger has just like dissipated or anything.
Right.
It's
It's still there. Yep. No, same here. And yeah, we're not perfect. We're on this path to help us understand these emotions and work with them skillfully. So I don't know. I think this is going to help me out.
I think so too. It always does for me, regardless of what we're talking about.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, I want to check in with you, see how your week's going, see what's going on in your meditation or your daily life practice. What's
Yeah.
showing up?
Both of them. So yeah, I got to have darshan with Lama on Saturday. That's where we get to meet and talk to him about whatever's going on with our practice. And as usual, it was quite helpful. What I brought to the table was that my sort of laxity and laziness when it came to meditation, and actually how that extended into regular life. Like essentially, like what I was complaining about or talking about wasn't just the laxity in meditation. I think that's part of it. But the other thing is that, I'm really grateful for the fact that I seem to have, through these various practices, I've been able to tap into sort of greater potential just in regular life. Like I can do more, things are a little easier, whatever. But I get the sense that I'm not really at full max potential, like I know that there's more that I can do, right? I can't. So, and that's true with
within your current capacity.
Yeah. Like I know that I'm capable of more, but I'm not really like not stretching for it. So anyway,
Yeah.
I was bringing that up, and he said, "Yeah, that's part of the path. That's coasting. Like that's fine. Nothing wrong with coasting. Like you just, And he said, I really enjoyed it. He said he said, like normally our practice, if it's a healthy practice, it looks like a sine wave. Like it's just, it's just a nice sort of gentle up and down, up and down. And he was like, hopefully it's not like going really high up and then plateauing and then crashing back down. That he said that's not very helpful. So I was glad to know that. I think that that's probably true for me. I think it's a bit like a sine wave. And I thought that the advice in general was quite helpful, both in terms of my meditation practice. He gave me some extra tips on on dealing with laxity in particular, basically trying to rouse greater sort of bodhicitta by using other people's energy, which I thought was quite helpful. Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, so for example, it doesn't have to be necessarily contemplating other people's suffering, but that's just the example that we were talking about. So, for example, a mutual friend of ours recently lost his best friend, and um, I was just talking about that, how like there was this sort of felt sense there, like a real, deep response on my end. And he was like, yeah, so that's what you use. You can use that to like wake yourself. You can wake yourself up out of your sort of dreamy state in meditation by bringing a real life person in. It may not be your own energy that you can use somebody else's, but it's a felt energy, right? Where you're there with it. And he said, if you do that, then it will bring you out. And I've had only a little bit of time to practice with it, but I'd say that it was good advice. It does seem to be helpful. And the other thing that I thought was really great was just in regards to regular performance, as we call it, living life. It was kind of cool because I told him, I was like, yeah, so I just noticed this sort of resistance to like I kind of am happy with like coasting, and like I'll see like, oh, I can do this, but I'm not gonna do that right now. There's some resistance to doing it, and I can't. He likes to talk about resistance, and in this case, he was like, yeah, so like you're coasting along, but you're trying to get up the mountain, right? And like that, it doesn't get easier, right? As you climb the mountain, you might be in a spot where you're not like going straight up, right? Maybe we're at base camp or something and just sort of walking around, right? But like if you're ready to start climbing again, then you push off of that resistance. You use it like that. And I know that I've heard that in other contexts before, but the way in which he described it to me was quite helpful, so that it, like when I'm like, oh, I see, I'm currently resisting that. Am I ready to climb? And the thing is, the point is like he was like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with coasting. There's nothing wrong with kind of just taking it easy, but you're here to climb. You're trying to get to the top.
Yeah.
Right?
So eventually you'll need to put your better boots on.
Exactly. He's like, you could stay here, but like if you want to get to the, you only stop climbing when you reach the top. So anyway, so I thought that was really great. It's super helpful, and just always so good to see him.
Yeah, gosh, that's so I always feel so like humanized in those interactions with Lama, right? Where I'll come with something like that where I'm just feeling like, man, I don't know what's going on, or I just, I feel like exactly that, like not applying myself or something. And then he'll just kind of gently, counter that by being like, you're okay where you are, and I think also that shows like a level of trust in us, that like he knows that we're going to continue our practice. Like we're not at risk of not doing it, right? Like we've gotten to a point where it's like, okay, no, we're going to be consistent enough. And so to be reminded that like, okay, good enough for right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And
yeah, absolutely. That it's always it's I never quite get used to it, actually. That feeling of it's like a type of support that I don't know that I've ever quite experienced before.
Yeah, it's both acceptance and the like invitation to challenge.
Yeah, exactly. There's this great sort of like feeling of being like very well heard and understood, and there's there's that aspect of it, and then there's that acceptance and the support and encouragement.
Right. Good stuff, Daniel.
Yeah, super good stuff. So I am applying it. I already see, some effects from that. I look forward to just continuing with that. So super good stuff.
Yeah.
What about you, my friend? What's going on with you?
Yeah, so my training the last week has been interesting. I for the last year or so, I have been every once in a while checking out these morning meditation practices with Shravasti Abbey, which is in Eastern Washington. Yeah. And Venerable Thubten Chodron is the abbess there, and she's written a bunch of amazing dharma books I recommend checking out. And so I've been going to their kind of lay people morning meditation practice. And I can't do every day because I've got to, get ready for work and whatnot. But on the days in the last week that I have been able to go, I've gone. And I also attended their Memorial Day retreat from afar, so joined online. And I was just reminded about how important it is and how deeply valuable Sangha is. Because it was like a whole weekend of just consistent showing up, knowing that there were other people doing the same thing, right? And then doing meditations together. And even from afar, like on Zoom, I can just, feel a total different type of energy within me when I'm meditating with other people. There's a responsibility thing there. Like, I don't quite know what it is, but it's like, I feel like I am being held accountable, and I'm also doing the same for the other people there, so there's this real, again, the support and the challenge, both of them coming together.
Positive peer pressure.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And of course I went to temple online on Sunday morning, and Lama's talk was really inspiring to me, and also kind of difficult. Like, it was there was just a lot there. It was dense, and so I liked that. It felt like something to chew on. But I've noticed too a kind of like, I feel like I'm constantly recommitting to like healthy discipline. I've really struggled in the past with unhealthy discipline, which is like the kinds that, maybe Lama was warning you about, is that you don't want to go like this with your meditation. You don't want to like try and get so much done all at once, because it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. And so I used to do that, where I'd like have bouts, have times where I would, get up super early, like 4 a.m, to do my meditation practice. And it was not great. But I then I would swing to the other end, where it was like, gosh, I was kind of too tired to do training. And so I feel like I'm finding my kind of pendulum middle way between those. And yeah, I like, maybe the word that I would like to start using more is diligence, that I'm continually showing up. And so I was just reminded there was just a lot of opportunity for Sangha this weekend, both with Shravasti Abbey and Lions Roar. And I felt this real, like, this kind of wonder around just how much having community is uplifting, even though folks are far away.
Yeah.
That like there's almost no room for depression when I'm being like held, by so many people. And I'm actually going to be giving a talk for Lions Roar at the end of July, and I think that's going to be the topic, is like, depression and the Sangha.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
I look forward to it. That's going to be awesome.
Yeah. So
do you know the day? I just want to write it down.
Yeah, it's the last Sunday of July. I think it's the 31st. And I'll be doing it online because unfortunately I have some classes that I needed to sign up for, and I don't have the time off for it these days.
It'll be my birthday present. My birthday is the day before.
Oh, yay.
So
happy almost 2 months away birthday.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, that's really cool. So the day after, that'll be my birthday present, is like your talk.
That sounds excellent.
Cool.
So that's what I've been kind of balancing. And I do notice a difference in my meditation, just a little bit less of the anxiety striving aspect where I feel like it should be a certain way, or, I shouldn't be so distracted all the time. It's just kind of like, well, here I am. This is what it's like.
It's fantastic to hear, like, I'm so glad that even though sometimes physically we might be quite separated, it's good to know that the support is there,
Yeah.
and like it seems like it's sort of a theme for both of us, right? That there's like we've discovered or whatever, maybe became increasingly aware of the support that we do have, right? Both from our teacher and from our sangha. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Yep. Because there is no doing it alone.
I wouldn't want to, even if it was.
I know. Yeah, I am
don't
not.
know, those the cowboy Buddhas,
Yeah.
go at it alone, man. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it's not me. It's not for me.
Yeah, it's not for me either. It seems actually somewhat dangerous too. Like you could really get into some wrong views if you don't have a community of support to help you. Yeah.
Giving you feedback, right? Saying like, hey, don't go there. Go there instead. You're headed up the dangerous face of the mountain.
Right,
there.
right.
Yeah.
It can get kind of nihilistic, right? Like
totally. There's
aspects of the Dharma that if you don't have support and training and someone who's been on the path ahead of you, there's things that can appear very nihilistic. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's not a good place to be.
Yeah. In fact, that was actually one of the things I thought was so interesting. One of the things that I've been dealing with, I did talk to Lama about a little bit, was this feeling of nihilism. And I was like, yeah, but it's weird because it's like I'm occupying both ends of the spectrum at once. I have this nihilism that seems to be somewhat based on eternalism, somewhat prompted by our discussion about the nature of time not too long.
Interesting. And what did he say?
What did he say about that? I don't think he said much.
Yeah. Well, then maybe I won't say much either. But the thought that bubbled up was like, it seems like nihilism and eternalism are just two sides of the same coin, right? Because if you believe that things are permanent and can't change, then what's kind of the point? And then also when you notice that actually, well, things can't possibly be that way, you kind of plunge into a deep nihilism, right? Because you still have this idea that's not grounded in reality. So
yeah, really the ideal is a balance between the two of them.
Yeah,
like just in between, right? Middle way.
Yep.
All right.
Things exist, but not in the way that we think of them.
Never in the way I think of them. Not yet, anyway.
Well, on that note, since we have to train our minds, we have to learn about the Dharma and really kind of what's the word? Infuse our minds with the Dharma, or steep. That's the word I like. Steep our minds in the Dharma, like we're a tea.
Or a little Dharma tea. Let's do it.
Dharma tea. So what you've pulled up here for people who might just be listening is the random Lojong slogan generator on the Lionswear website. Should we try it?
Heck yeah. I'll press the button on the RLSG. See what comes up.
Okay. Number 52, avoid misunderstandings. Have we had this one? Did we have this one recently? Twisted priorities.
I don't think, did we have misunderstanding? I don't think so.
No? Okay. Well, I'm going to read it. And there's a little passage.
Yeah, maybe we did.
I think we did. Okay, so then we're coming back to something. That means that it's important for us, Daniel. And Choyam Trungpa, he's talking here about the kind of twisted priorities that we can get ourselves into out of self-interest, right? So kind of a twisted compassion might be that, you know, we have compassion only for those who we like or who give us things, or, you know, kind of build up our ego. You know, we can feel good about those people, but we don't about, you know, others. That might be a twisted compassion. Or let's see, what else? Ooh, misinterpreted yearning is to foster yearning for pleasure and wealth, but not to encourage the yearning to practice dharma.
Yeah,
I have that one.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, every now and then, you know, that phrase Schadenfreude, I think that's how you say it.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So twisted joy is to be happy when sorrow afflicts your enemies, but not to rejoice in virtue and the joy of transcending samsara. So being happy when
Uh-oh.
sorrow afflicts your enemies, I need to watch that one. I don't
I
really have,
know.
but I do sometimes have this sort of feeling of like, yeah, it serves you right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think I've been called on that one because
Yeah.
I definitely, and it's lessened, you know, as in the last few years as I've been studying more. But I definitely have taken pleasure in seeing like downfall of various powerful people
And that
in the
that's an
world, right?
extension of exactly, and that's an extension of what's mentioned here, the twisted compassion, right?
Right.
So, you know, having that, exactly, having compassion for people that, you know, we can relate to, but those who we think are evil, or yeah, whatever, bad in some way, some format, and not having compassion for them, excluding them from it somehow. That
Right.
that would be twisted compassion. It's a good point. I actually hope this one comes up multiple times.
Yeah. We need it. Yeah.
Definitely, no doubt
Don't
about it.
get it twisted.
Do not avoid misunderstandings. That's a good one.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it is a good segue into our topic tonight of anger, because as I said, I can definitely experience a lot of that Schadenfreude, the joy in witnessing someone suffering, when it's for people that I don't like and that I'm harboring malicious intent towards. And malice is one of the 10 destructive actions that lead to negative consequences or negative karma. And it's one of the 3 ones that are done by the mind. There's 4 that are done by speech, which is really interesting, and 3 that are done by body, and then 3 that are done by mind. And so malicious intent is one of those.
Yeah, it's amazing. So if you think about it, like when anger arises, it can certainly be expressed in all 3 of those formats, right? Through body, speech, and mind.
Absolutely.
Usually is actually in all of them. Um,
Right?
yeah, you know, the one thing that I really appreciate about Dharma practice is how you know, we get to be sort of like friends with our emotions, and
Yeah.
or you know, we get to know them in a different way and learn to sort of transmute them, to use like an alchemical term. And I, you know, like I never really in the past, I always just thought anger was this, I'm angry, there's this anger, I'm acting angrily. But really, there's a pretty big difference between anger and the expression, you know, of that through aggression. And it's actually,
Mm.
there's nothing really wrong with anger, right? Like that's what I think is so beautiful about it, is that anger itself is fine as an emotion. It's there for a reason. It's just
It's
pure.
kind of neutral, right?
Yeah, all things, right? All phenomena are neutral until the ego gets a hold of them. And so
Right.
in their neutral state, in the absence of ego, it's just this pure energy. And that can be useful. It can be good. It can be helpful, right? There's enlightened energy, right? We have tankas up in the temple of, you know, enlightened beings who are wrathful, who are manifesting enlightened anger, you know, but they're not aggressive.
Right.
Right, and that distinction is something I don't think that ever occurred to me until I started learning.
That is super interesting. So then aggressive is then acting out on your anger. Is that what
That's
the
right.
difference is?
Yeah, exactly that. So it's just that so it's like it's like what happens when anger gets distorted through the lens of ego, right?
Mm.
Where when are relating it back to the self somehow, right?
Yeah.
That's when it becomes aggression. But in its
Right.
other state, it's actually so, like the actual feeling or emotion of anger itself is, I think that they say it's a manifestation of wisdom. It's clear. It's like a pure mirror, um, um, where you can see things quite clearly. It's cutting, right?
Mm.
So it's helpful in that side. What do they say? I have a note here. It's sharp, accurate, and penetrating insight. It's
Mm.
the wisdom of clarity, right? And so that's anger, and it shows up for a
In its
reason,
enlightened form, right?
in its enlightened form.
Right.
But unfortunately, we're not enlightened beings, and so we oftentimes do things, we misunderstand anger, and we act out on it. We do all kinds of things,
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And it becomes such a cycle too, right? It
uh,
feeds on
uh,
itself, and the
yeah,
damage that is done by acting out. So we can have, like you were saying, we can experience that feeling of anger, and then it becomes, a thought. Maybe it becomes like malicious intent, like kind of thinking about how can I, get revenge? How can I harm this person, in response? And then I feel like whether we act it out or not, it's still harmful, right? To just be in that thought mode of like rumination, because no matter what, it's going to have an effect on my mind, at least. It certainly
yeah.
has an effect to
Oh my
ruminate
God,
on
for
it, right?
sure, for
Oh
sure.
my
Because
gosh,
when
toxic.
so for us non-enlightened beings, when anger arises, it's either going to be expressed through aggression, or it's going to be suppressed, right? And
Yeah.
the forms of suppression can vary. I think that, like, at least in my case, I think that there was a decent amount of trying to just sort of deny that it existed in the first place. That's where
Oh,
like you mentioned, sort of at the outset, I'm like, oh, I've never been an angry bro. I don't know what you're talking about. My kids are like, what are you talking? You've been angry all the time about all kinds of stuff, right?
ah,
Yeah, and I think that also, I think to some extent, my substance abuse situation was related to that, right? It's
sure.
another form of like repression or suppression, you know,
And
and
self-harm, right? Self-directed
totally.
anger.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. Well, that's the thing, is we're angry about all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And we think it's maybe outside of us. Sometimes it's where the object is somebody else. Sometimes it's ourselves. Sometimes it's, I mean, what we're angry about varies so tremendously, but our
So much.
responses can be really piss poor.
Oh yeah. And there's so many different types of anger too. Like it's not just like we think of anger, like you were saying earlier on, as this kind of like big, like expression, like outward expression. It could be like just that kind of like inner, like passive aggressiveness, where you're just kind of like annoyed or frustrated by someone. It's
Right.
irritability, right? And then it goes into like these kind of larger ones like hatred, right? Hatred and rage. And so there's a whole spectrum of anger. Like even I heard that, like impatience is anger, or like wanting to be somewhere else is a form of anger, wanting a situation to be different is a form of anger. I thought that was incredible because that's aversion, right?
It's a form of, it's a, we've taken the precept to not kill, right?
Right.
And I think that in many ways, I'm not, like the idea is that the anger shows up as a wanting to stop something, want to just kill something, right?
Yeah,
Not
shut it
necessarily
down.
a person or a living being, but there's a situation, there's a phenomenon, there's something going on, and we want to stop it, whatever
Right,
that happens to be.
right.
Yeah, yeah, and
And who
manifests in
and
so many ways.
so many ways. And who does it always come down to?
Ah,
What is that anger all about? I love this. So here's this definition from Study Buddhism, which is by the Berzin Archives. I definitely recommend checking them out. Says one of the 6 root disturbing emotions and attitudes aimed at another limited being, one's own suffering, or situations entailing suffering, and which is impatient with them and wishes to get rid of them, such as by damaging or hurting them, or by striking out against them. It is based on regarding its object as unattractive or repulsive by its very nature.
Mm.
And who's at the bottom of all of that is the self, right? It's not saying that, you know, the other person like is bad, right? It's saying I'm experiencing that person or situation or being as bad, and I want to strike out because it's hurting me in some way. I find it unattractive. I find it repulsive, and therefore destroy.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's evidenced by the fact that the fact that it's us, you know, it's the me. It's sort of evidenced by the fact that anger isn't shared uniformly. So like the causes of anger, some things that make me angry perhaps make other people happy, or they feel neutral,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, you know, like you know, like I the other day I was walking through the neighborhood with my nephew, and there was this somebody was having, I think it must have been like a quinceañera or something like that, and so it was like, I think it might have been close, maybe like 11 o'clock at night, and it was a raucous affair. I mean, the music was just blaring as loud, and it had been for a while, you know. And it was interesting because he and I were talking about how like many people might be annoyed by that, like really bothered. Oh, they're such jerks, and they're inconsiderate and this and that. But that actually plenty of other people would just be like, heck yeah, like that's some good music, or I totally understand. I had a quinceañera last week or whatever, or they might even be sort of joy or I mean, obviously it's an occasion for great joy and happiness, but not for everybody. And so all I'm saying is that anger is clearly mine. Like if I have it, I wasn't mad about the music or anything, but if it's mine, right? Like that's me. That's that anger. That's not something outside of me. It's right here.
Right. I know. And how, it feels like it's a universal, right? Like in those moments of experiencing that anger, we feel like I am justified because this is unfounded. Like this is uncalled for. But turns out it's not a universal. Like it's literally just that I have different rules that I have made up that benefit and shield and, you know, guard me, that don't have anything to do with the rest of the world. Some people might agree with me. You know?
Totally. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And then of course we like those people, right? Because we can bring them into our milieu to complain with.
Oh, and to justify it, right? Absolutely. No doubt about it.
Yeah, and of course, misery loves company, right? So if we're miserable with anger, man, what is the best thing to do? Is you get that friend who's also just as angry about the same thing or about another thing. And oh my gosh, you can just spit vinegar all day. It's so toxic.
It's true.
I'm curious, Daniel, where are some of the, like, what are your anger kind of triggers, or what things come up for you?
Well, so there's definitely a sense of like righteous indignation when that's one of the, there's been so many times where I feel this anger, like when it comes on like fire, like when it's like really raging hot, it's oftentimes because of some type of injustice. You know, there's a way things are supposed to be, and you're not supposed to be doing that, and you know better, and you know, there's like that. But then it shows up a lot of times when I think probably largely like when anger is directed at myself, it's actually quite similar, where it's this sort of like something happens, something doesn't go my way, or you know, whatever, something that I don't like happens, and when I flash, I recognize that I did that. Like I knew better. You know,
yes, you should know better.
It's a result of my decision making, or I had information. I should have done something different. I didn't do that, and here I am. I'm mad about it because I'm so stupid, or something like that, right? Where I get really kind of mad at myself. I think that's primarily, the two ways that I notice me getting quite angry. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
What about you?
I know both of those very
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
I think I grew up around a lot of anger.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like my dad was just a very angry man. It's gotten a little bit better over the years, but he would definitely very much inward direct his anger, but it was also in an explosive way, so we would experience it. But yeah, it would be about things like losing his keys, right? And it would
Yeah.
just be like he'd be storming around the house like this, like totally red in the face, like
Yeah.
screaming at himself. And so I think I internalized that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't
Yeah.
really help it. But yeah, so I can see how some of those same patterns happen with me, like especially if I'm kind of under resourced mentally one day,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Where maybe I'm tired
Yes.
or there's already
Oh.
stress, right? Like maybe work is just like there's a lot going on. I've got a podcast in the evening to
Right.
do, and there's just, there's no time to lose my phone, right? But I lose my phone. And so I'll just be like, God damn it, like I'll just do kind of the same narrative that my dad would do, right? Like, why would you put it anywhere else than this, and of course, what does that get me my phone? And in fact, actually, I think what happens is when I get into that tirade, I become stupider,
Yeah. 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 It gets
right?
cloudy.
It gets so cloudy and I become so unskillful. And oftentimes, if people are around, right, what's the after effect of showing that kind of anger around other people?
Oh.
Is I
Oh.
feel so humiliated, right?
Oh.
It's embarrassing
Yeah.
to express
Yeah.
anger in that way.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. And the harm that one thing that's amazing about it is we might actually get over our angry outbursts quite easily because it's a release. It's actually a release when we're aggressive. It's a release of the energy. So it feels we're okay, in many cases after we've expressed it in that way. But if we've done it unskillfully, I was just talking to my kids about it. Both of them were dealing with a family member who behaved quite angrily with them, and then sort of was like I'm like just pretend like nothing happened, right?
oh
And
yikes.
they
Yeah.
were like they both was just like this person is not going to understand. They don't understand that this is going to be something I remember for a long time. I'm not going to drop this
Totally.
anytime
Yeah.
soon. And that I've internally, they said things about me and about our relationship. They said things like this is all your fault because blah 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 whatever, right? And then the kids were telling me just today, they were like, yeah, like I guess if that's what they really think, if that's how it is, then that's how it is, and I'm going to go ahead and act as if that's the case. And
Yeah,
it
right.
reminds me, I think it was Shakespeare who said, speak when you're angry and you'll give the best speech you'll ever regret. you
Mm.
know and I feel like sometimes what happens in anger, I know that this was the case with my own father and I see it in other people, the aggression is like it comes up, it flares up, and it feels perfectly justified, and because it's shared, everybody's righteous, it's right somehow, and then that means that whatever expression comes out of that, however the energy is manifest, whatever we do with our body, speech, and mind is also justified as a result, because we're right to be angry somehow.
Mm.
And then once it's gone, the anger sort of subsided. There's peace. Actually, it's kind of like for the person that they're like, yeah, I'm all right. But what they've caused is a ton of sort of karmic action, right?
Yeah,
There's
a hurricane.
that ripple effect is going out, and that stuff comes back and harms relationships if nothing else, right?
Oh yeah. Well, and I think, I I personally feel like my experience with that release of the energy is a little different. And I think that it was the same for my dad too. It's that when I have that intense of anger and I get it out, I externalize it, um, I actually start to feel a lot of shame and
Mm.
anxiety and exhaustion. Um, And
Yeah,
and
you
I
just have to repress that stuff.
right? Okay, yeah, good. Thank you.
That's
Yes.
that's
Okay,
what
I'll
I
work on
learned.
it. I'll work on suppression. But yeah, I would notice with my dad too, like he would do this thing where he would just like, then after one of these outbursts, he would just be like apologizing profusely, right? And well, and before that too, there was another stage where he'd be like, oh, just let me be angry. Like, there'd be a little bit of like embarrassment, but he would still be, like he said, that kind of justified, like, no, I had a reason to be angry, so just let me be angry. But then yeah, it would kind of devolve into like, yeah, just like such guilt. So I don't know, like people say like, oh, you have to express your anger for it to get out, but I don't think that if you were to well, that's the thing, is that I think we need to transform it, right? Like just getting the anger out is not necessarily a better thing, right? Because sometimes
it's
the
actually
damage is a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. And according to, at least within Buddhism, it's going to damage, it's like a fire, right? And it's going to destroy a lot of things, right?
Including positive karma, right? It just burns up
Exactly.
positive karma is what they say. Yeah.
That's what they say, right? Is that, okay, on the one hand, it's going to destroy our peace, right? It's going to torment us with all kinds of thoughts. That's for damn sure. Like we were just talking about, it destroys our relationships. It's certainly when we're all pissed off like that and acting it out or ruminating or whatever, we're suppressing it. Our pleasure is gone completely, whatever pleasure we have. And like you were saying, our karma, our merit, whatever merit we've accumulated, man, like it makes it really hard to remain sort of ethical or engage in moral behavior, right? With our body, speech, and mind, we're obviously going to act it out in a way that's not quite proper, and so and if you do believe in reincarnation, then the suggestion is that one outburst of anger has the possibility, not guaranteed, but the possibility to set you back 1,000 eons, no matter how much you practice. Yeah, exactly. So here you've practiced. Oh, you've been doing this not just for one life, but you've been doing this for 10 billion lifetimes, and every one of them you worked up. Oh, you're good, and then you just ruin it.
Oh man.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I love how this kind of, maybe I'll say it's kind of like a metaphorical,
sure, fine,
like making it that intense, right? Because in order to just impress on us like how harmful the expression of anger is, because for me, I don't want to think that my outbursts could send me back a whole eon. I'm gonna say it's metaphorical right now.
Yeah. Oh well, maybe it's just metaphor, and that's fine, and it's useful. But I think that it's offered in response to the notion that is quite common, that there's something useful about acting out on anger. Like the point is that anger itself, the energy, is perfectly useful. There's nothing bad about it. Like we were talking about, it's fine. It's coming up for a reason, right? But if you act unskillfully with that anger, it's never useful. It's actually it's never going to be helpful, ever.
Yeah, no. I super recommend this book called Working with Anger by Thupten Chodron, who's the abbess that I was talking about earlier. And she really digs into, all of these kind of myths that we have around anger, such as, that it's good, it lets us know when something's wrong, and we have to express it healthily, otherwise it gets bottled up, and or that it's protecting us in some way, or that we need to have anger in order to get social justice, all of these kind of myths that we have around anger, and she just totally cuts through them. And I want to get more confident in myself in really understanding that, because like I talked about last week about peer pressure, is that I really I struggle when other people are kind of doing that righteous indignation thing. Like I just slide right on into it. Like I'm right there. And sometimes I'm even fanning the flames, right, of other people's righteous indignation. So I really want to get like stabilize that understanding that there really is no time when an expression of the anger coming from ego is valid. It's only going to be destructive. And you know, I had this realization. I'm going to call it a realization just because it felt like a big deal to me, but it was probably just like a little bell going off. But I recognized the other day that probably the main reason that I came to the Dharma was because of people who I have a lot of anger towards. And I felt very kind of pissed off about that. Like, I didn't want the Dharma and my journey with the Dharma to be so closely associated with things and people that make me rageful.
Right.
And so that was a really interesting thing that I think, you know, if we want to talk about ways that we can kind of transform our anger, I think that's one, is kind of recognizing how has these experiences, maybe it's, you know, people who have really hurt me or others who I feel kind of.
Jack, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
Just a second. I'll be right back.
Go get it. Hello, everybody. It's so nice for y'all to be joining us.
Sorry about that.
Who's back? No worries. I heard the dog.
The little kid from next door was over. He wanted to talk to me.
Oh, buddy.
Yeah, I was like, buddy, no, you can come back later. I thought it was like a salesperson. I was starting to get angry that they kept knocking.
Yeah.
I needed to transform it.
Yeah. Well, and that's such a good experience in the moment of like, okay, what's skillful here? Maybe I should just check out what's happening.
Yeah, let me just pause for a second. But right. I remember you were saying that the idea, it was frustrating that you were the anger was what brought you here. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, because I feel like I could have just kind of coasted along in my kind of, you know, just like everyday samsaric life. You know, not just experiencing everyday annoyances or frustrations or angers. But what really kind of forced me into, you know, figuring that I needed to do something about this were those experiences where I have a lot of rage. And malicious intent.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, I read something by Lama Yeshe. And he said, we all yearn for love, right? This is not a direct quote. This is like a paraphrase. We all yearn to be loved. But it's actually more important that someone has anger towards us than for us to be loved. And that's because if no one has anger towards us, then we can never develop the precious quality of patience. Yeah. So I think it actually goes, it goes the other way as well, right?
Oh, yeah,
so in a sense, like all those people essentially were working really hard to bring you to the Dharma.
Yeah. And with my current understanding, that idea makes me mad. Right? But I intellectually, and you know, there's a little like twinkling in my heart that says that, you know, spiritually I'm seeing the value of knowing that, right? And also like, yeah, just the lifting the burden of that, holding on to that anger, right? I feel like, you know, anger is such a burden. Even those little small annoyances throughout the day, it's such a burden to let myself get like burned by little things, like someone's stepping in line in front of me.
Right.
I get pissed about stuff like that, you know, like where I'll just be kind of like burning a little bit
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah.
But I got home at the exact same time as I as I do every day. So it's not like
Right.
someone has, you know, taken me, burned down my house or something, you know. It's like, and even if
Yeah.
someone burned down my house, what could they teach me?
Well, yeah. I mean, well, you're taking it too far, Jack.
And this idea though, right? That all of our enemies, all of the people that harm us, every single instance of that is an opportunity to practice the dharma and to
Oh,
learn, to develop our wisdom, right?
that's just right. I mean, the thing is that like we don't want to excuse or ignore anything, right?
Absolutely not.
Definitely
Absolutely
not.
not. Yeah.
But other people's aggression towards us, perhaps burning our house down or cutting in front of us in line or whatever the hell it is, that's their maladapted response to their suffering. And we have maladaptive responses to our own suffering. So we know that, and that unites us, right? So, we can have a little bit of compassion there and be like, oh, they're just like me,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. You may not have burned somebody's house down, but those embers that you carry around, right? If you're constant, what is it that Lama has said? Like we're all carrying around a glowing hot coal of anger or something like that. And the problem with that is that it doesn't take much except just a little bit of grass, a little bit of kindling, and the right spark of just the right thing, right? And it just sets it off. And then when it gets set off, when it can burn down entire families, right?
Oh yeah, big time.
So yeah, so we got to be hella careful to use the telephone.
We do have to be hella careful. Yeah. I think too, when we're thinking about anger towards ourselves, because we talked a little bit about anger about others, and frustrations with others.
Yeah.
It's so incredibly important to remember that we too are sentient beings. So when we make mistakes, how to address anger with ourselves. I think in this book, Working with Anger, there's some really good tips. Developing love and compassion for ourselves, right? Kind of turning it the other way. And reminding ourselves like, oh yeah, I have maladaptive behaviors.
And that actually underneath it, underneath the anger or the hatred or whatever we might be experiencing there is actually some loving kindness way down, right? Way down inside, because it's an expression of wanting to be happy, right? Of our own happiness.
Right, reminding ourselves of that, that all beings, ourselves included, want to be free of this suffering. We all have the seed for liberation, and we're all yearning for it all the time. We just have these kind of crazy expressions of it because we don't know.
Right, seed of liberation, seed of mindfulness, seed of anger, right? Which one do we want to nurture?
Yeah.
Right, over time, like one of them is gonna grow, or many of them are gonna grow. It's the ones that we nurture.
Yeah, and I like that you bring up the seed, because if we keep planting anger, thinking that what's going to blossom is love and compassion, it's not possible. A mung bean sprout can't turn into a sequoia. It's what you plant is what's going to come up, and that's
right.
such a great point.
You plant some anger, you're not going to get bodhicitta.
Yeah. So every time, I feel like that's such a good antidote, is like when I feel myself planting that anger either towards myself or others, can I also maybe plant some love and compassion, maybe a lot more. Maybe even pull up that anger sprout if I can, which is really hard for me right now.
Yeah. Well, have you ever heard of the metaphor of the poison tree?
I haven't, no.
So within Buddhism, it's a traditional metaphor that I just learned about. So I'm not super familiar with it. But the idea is that anger is this poison tree. We've been talking about sprouting from a seed and whatnot. So the idea is that so we nourish it, and eventually it sort of grows and it gets kind of big. And so once this happens, it's this poison tree. And the 4 steps within this metaphor to dealing with the poison tree, it goes like this. The first thing you do is you prune the tree, right? So you have to just trim it back a little bit. And all that is refraining from indulging in anger. And so that and that's one of the benefits that I think, that's how I feel like my life has been greatly transformed. At least the angry portion of my life has been transformed by Dharma, is that there's a bigger gap between
the mindful pause.
Mindful pause, right?
Yeah.
So I don't have to indulge in the anger. I can just be aware of it. And that's the pruning of the tree. And then the second step is uprooting the tree. And we do that in meditation by bringing the anger into meditation, and we can see its emptiness, its impermanence,
Yeah.
See how it's not solid.
I'm not an angry person. I'm a person who's experiencing anger, and I can change it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing that prompted that anger in many cases is multiple things. Sometimes it's because, you've got low blood sugar and you're late for your Talk Openly show and you're in line, right? There's a lot of things going on there, but that's the uprooting of the tree, is bringing mindfulness to it. And then we recognize actually that the tree is medicine. The tree isn't necessarily bad, right? Like, so we can actually uncover this wisdom from the tree. That's the medicine of it. And so the medicine is the wisdom component, the enlightened form of anger, where it is there for a reason. If we can avoid indulging in it, if we can see it clearly with mindfulness, then we can get to see the actual wisdom portion, the wisdom energy of anger. And then the last part is called the peacock. And this I don't quite get, but it's the culmination. So what happens is, this is the culmination of the first 3 steps. So it's not really a 4th step, but what happens is the peacock comes along and gobbles up the entire tree, the whole tree, and not a trace remains. And so the peacock transforms the poison of anger into enlightened activity, I suppose.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah, I like the idea of pruning, and uprooting, as well as noticing how it doesn't have to be this totally destructive thing. Maybe if we can just kind of recognize it, see how it changes. It can be somewhat of an experience of the nature of our reality, which is that it's shifting all the time. And then how funny that we can just gobble it up and no trace remains. That's that wonderful enlightened stage of this peacock, where we can just gobble it up and it doesn't even have an effect on us. It's really wonderful.
The note I wrote here under the peacock is that when destructive anger does arise, we're not seduced, nor do we run away from it. We gobble it up on the spot.
That's great. Well, may we all become peacocks.
Yeah. I can see your feathers.
Well, thanks. I don't remember the sound that a peacock makes, but I think it's kind of funny. Yes, they meow. Oh my gosh, that's right. Very quick side story. I was in Hawaii a couple months ago, and there was this, I swear to God, there was this cat that just would not shut up. And they were yelling and yelling and yelling. I was looking for this cat, and it was a peacock.
It was a peacock. It kind of sounds like somebody's yelling help.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Well, may we not have to yell and scream like a peacock, but if we could have that enlightened quality around anger, oh, what a relief, right?
Let's gobble it up, Jack.
Let's gobble it up. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. This has been a real treat for me, really. Very helpful. And look forward to next time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jack. Thanks everybody for listening.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.